Welcome back. We've just created a material instance and assigned it to our gun in the world. Now we're ready to create a horizontal lines effect. So let's get started. Now here I have the Druid Mechanics GitHub on the UE4 CPP Shooter Series. The link will be in the resources. Now if you haven't already, you're going to need to download this textures.zip. Download it and extract it to your computer, and once you've done that, you can import this. We're going to go into _game/assets/textures, and I'm going to right click and create a new folder, and I'm going to call this horizontal lines, and double click that and click add import. Now we're going to select import asset, and I'm going to go to my assets folder where I downloaded the textures, and in the textures there's a folder called horizontal lines. Now there's a couple of images here. We're going to use horizontal lines.png. Go ahead and click open, and now we have this texture. Now we can click save all so that we have this at our disposal. Now click on this texture and drag it up into the FSMG glow material function so that we have this texture sample node. And with the texture sample node selected, you can see in the details panel there's a texture property and it's set to horizontal lines. Now we're going to create a moving lines effect. We can do that using a node called a panner node. Right click and type panner, P-A-N-N-E-R, and notice the panner has a speed input. This takes a two-dimensional vector. Now we can hold the 1 key and click twice to get two scalars. Now we can drag off of one and type append and use an append vector node to create a 2D vector, and then this we can plug into speed. Now I'd like to make these into parameters. Right click the first one, convert to parameter, and we're going to call this uSpeed. Right click on the second one, convert that to a parameter and call this vSpeed. Now this panner has an output. We're going to connect that into the UVs for the texture sample. Now the panner also takes a coordinate. This is the coordinate on the screen in UV space. We can right click and type texture coordinate and get a texture coordinate node. Hook this up to the coordinate, and now panner has the coordinates information. Now what are we going to do with this scrolling texture sample? Well, we can multiply this by the color, and that way the color will show up as lines instead of just a color. So let's go ahead and highlight the Fresnel nodes and bring them back a bit. And I'm going to hold M and click to get a multiply node. And I'm going to multiply the result of the Fresnel. We'll drag that into the A, and I'll put the texture sample RGB value into the B, and I'll use this multiply to hook up to the rest of the material. Let's see how this looks by clicking apply. Now you can see in the preview that we have these lines here. Now we have a U speed and a V speed. If we want these lines to be scrolling up and down, we can give V speed a value. So I'm going to give it a default value. So with a value of 1, you can see that the lines are moving quite quickly. So we can move this default value down to say 0.2, and with a value of 0.2, they scroll a little bit more slowly. I'm going to set this to -0.2 so the lines flow downward instead of upward. And I'm going to click apply so that we can see what this looks like on the gun in the world. And here we have our scrolling material. Now wait a minute, why are the lines all going in different directions? That's because we're using texture coordinates. These are coordinates relative to the texture itself. Now we can use coordinates relative to screen space. Let's go back to FSMG glow material, and instead of using texture coordinates, let's right click and type screen aligned, and we'll get screen aligned UVs. Delete the texture coordinate node, and instead take our screen aligned UVs and get this X 100%, Y 100%, drag that into coordinate. And now let's take a look in the world. Let's hit apply and look at our gun. And here we see the lines flowing down in screen space. So no matter which angle we're at, we'll still see lines flowing from top to bottom. Okay, excellent. Now before we wrap this up, I want to make one more adjustment. Notice that the lines are a bit far apart. Now we can adjust the size of these. let's take our screen aligned UVs, drag off, and type break, and we're going to use breakout float 2 components. Now this will break these UVs into the U and V components. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take the R and use an append. So we'll get an append vector, and I'll take the G, this is the V, the vertical coordinate, and I'm going to multiply this. And I'll hook the result of the multiply into B and use the result of this and plug that into the coordinate for Panner. So now we're going to multiply the V. I'm going to hold 1 and click and drag that in, and I'm going to right click and convert this to a parameter and call this lines size. And we can adjust the line size. We'll put this at a default value of 0.5 and apply and see what this looks like. Now 0.5 has actually made them farther apart with larger lines. That's because we're scaling the UV coordinates and not the texture itself. So if we want them to be smaller and closer together, we need to make line size bigger. I'll give it a value of 1.35, and I'll go ahead and apply this and see how this looks. Now we see the lines are smaller and closer together. Let's look at our gun now. Now in the world, we see our gun has lines with the same space apart, and that's because that line size is actually set on the material instance as well. So we can go into our materials folder, into SMG materials, and let's take our MSMG material instance and look for that new parameter called line size. Here it is here. Now we can adjust this by scrolling up until we get a value we like and save. And now in the world, our gun is reflecting that change. So that's going to conclude this video. We've learned now how to create a scrolling line effect in our glow material, and we've parameterized the size and speed of those lines. In the next video, we're going to learn how we can turn this effect on or off with code. See you in the next video.